To many, flying their own airplane is just a dream never realized. But to these Shell Point women, flying was a goal that they not only achieved, but thrived at.
After college and marriage and 2 children, about 1969, I looked around and thought, I'd like to learn to fly. So I clipped one of those $5 coupons out of Flying magazine and went down to Dodge Field outside Des Moines. And it was a 3,200-foot paved strip, but it was left over from Army Air Corps in the 40s. So my instructor was a farm boy who had a good sense of humor, but my reactions to being at the wheel didn't suit him. And he kept saying, "Aren't you a Girl Scout? Don't you know where north is?" You know, and I thought, I don't want to argue with this young man. But we smoothed that out, and it took about 9 hours of instruction for me to solo. And as soon as I could solo, I thought, wow, this is good. It proved 2 things. I can really fly and it feels good, and after 8 years at home, my brain still works. That was the main point. But I really enjoyed it. It was like dancing or like ice skating. And I would go out after work in summer evenings and fly over the grid of the Midwestern fields and look down and see the deer coming to drink at the creeks. And it was beautiful. It was very rewarding that way. Those 2 young children of mine, they were game for anything. So sometimes after work, I'd go pick up one or both of them and go out to the field. And we'd go up so I could practice stalls, which while it was happening, both kids reacted to it well. You know, they, ooh-wee, it was like a ride at the amusement park. So now this is where I'm getting the most bang for my ticket. My kids are in the back seat laughing. Years later, my son went through a rough patch, and he was talking with a counselor whom he called a shrink. I suppose it was a psychiatrist, who got very interested in what did he do with his parents, how did he get along with his parents. And he explained how he would go with me out to the field, and then we'd practice stalls. And the person who was interviewing him wanted to know what that was. And towards the end of the interviews, my son says, she got very curious about whether or not he thought he was an abused child. And he had to explain to her that that wasn't really so scary. One of the most fun times I had was when I took my boss's boss up in the aircraft. The word got out that I was doing this on my noon hours. And she said, you know, I'm curious. Okay, Dorothy, let's go. And I stalled out a few times with her, and I thought, I probably shouldn't do that anymore ever, and I probably shouldn't talk about it. But we landed, and she got out and was sort of patting. It's sort of like I'm on Earth, you know. And such a relief. And I thought, now that lady understands that people who work for her can have strong talents and strong motivation and do things that she maybe hasn't imagined. And I just took a little satisfaction. We didn't have a real power struggle, but there was just one little notch there. It was good. When they talk about fly by the seat of your pants, they're not kidding. You really can feel the way the aircraft is going and whether, you know, it's in good shape or not. And you can feel when the wind changes and you have to start tugging against it a little bit. My experiences were fairly small and fairly common, but I savored them. We lived on a bridgeless barrier island called North Captiva, where we had a little airstrip that ran from Pine Island Sound to the Gulf of Mexico. And a lot of the people out there have their homes on the airstrip, and that's their preference, because they fly out of that airstrip. Among them were several good pilots, with or without teaching tickets, I don't know, who volunteered to be instructors. And I went up with several of them. In particular, about 3 years ago, which is my last time really taking over, I went up with a gentleman who said, okay, give me a 2-minute turn. And this is a little practice exercise. You know, it's like the guys who go out and practice their putts or practice. Well, you can practice a 2-minute turn because the exercise is to get the speed stabilized, which in part is the throttle, but it's also the attitude of the wing, whether or not it's having to push to keep that wind going and lift going or not. But you get the speed and the attitude and the turn, and you have them all set up so that they're constant, and you do a nice gentle circle in 2 minutes. However, that day was just before the tarpon were starting to run in and out of passes, and so I'm at the north end of North Captiva and then one pass up, and I look down and those sharks are lined up along the channel waiting for the tarpon, and I couldn't take my eyes off, so I just steadied up and flew out towards the Gulf looking to see how many of the sharks were out there. And my dear friend said, "You flunked." So he let me fly his plane again, but he would not let me land it on that airstrip, and I think I appreciate that.